Wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ Envy, Angela Yee, Charlamagne the Guy. We are the Breakfast Club. We have a special guest on the line, Rochelle Ritchie. Welcome.
Good morning. Good morning, Envy. Good morning, Angela.
Hey,
Hey, Rochelle. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling good.
So, Rochelle, I've always, first of all, I met Rochelle really online just because I've always watched her on CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, Fox Business Network. So I really love the things that she has to say and bring into the conversation. You know, I'm always trying to educate myself on what's going on. So Rochelle is somebody I always look to just for that purpose. She also was the former Congressional Press Secretary for the House of Representatives, Democratic Policy and Communications Committee. Did I get that right?
Yes, you did. All of that. Thank you, Angela.
Nice. Now, how are you dealing with this pandemic? I heard your dad was battling COVID-19.
Yeah, my dad's been in the hospital since April 26th with coronavirus, and he was on a ventilator for about 3 days and came off of it. He's lost 21 pounds so far. He's on what's called an ECMO machine, which is basically a machine that oxygenates your blood.
Mm-hmm.
He did have at one point a partially collapsed lung. So, you know, it's been rough. I mean, I don't see him coming home until July. And, you know, in Chicago, you know, 70% of the coronavirus cases are happening in Black communities. And sadly, my father's a victim of one of them. And, you know, people think that this is a virus where, you know, oh, you're obese or you have asthma, you drink too much, whatever. My dad does not drink. My dad does not smoke, never has. He doesn't even drink beer. So he's 56, you know, so he's a relatively young guy. But it's hard. It's hard because, you know, you're not able to be there with them at all. Like, we're trying to do Zoom calls with these nurses who are scared to go in the room. So it's rough. It's really rough, but, you know, he's pulling through. He's off that ventilator, which is the best thing.
Right, because that ventilator's scary.
Yeah, it is.
So he had no underlying conditions at all.
Well, he does have diabetes, but it's not the kind where a person is obese. You know what I mean? Because I believe Holly Berry has diabetes, right? So you don't necessarily have to be an overweight person to have diabetes, but that's the most underlying issue that he has.
Right. So and so why is he in there so long? Because usually you hear 7 to 14 days. I mean, he's been in months.
Right. That's some BS. I try to tell people, like, don't think that just because you get the coronavirus that, oh, you can go and quarantine yourself or isolate yourself in your room for 14 days. That's not the case. This virus actually, it travels throughout the body, because not only was my father diagnosed, but his sister, my aunt, was also diagnosed. And she spent about 3 weeks in the hospital. And what they're finding is that people have different symptoms. So some people might feel like they're having hallucinations. Some people might, you know, have stomach pains or diarrhea or something like that. And they found that this virus kind of travels throughout the body and then settles into the lungs. And so I have been, you know, look, I was prepared for this very, very early on. As soon as I heard, who was it, Mayor de Blasio talking about, oh, you know, every option is on the table as far as how we're going to handle the pandemic, I was like, oh, they're about to shut the city down. I had a gas mask and everything. I was ready.
What do you think about places opening up right now?
You know, I think that it's a selfish idea. I know that people have to get back to work, but I think that putting the economy over our overall health is just the wrong move. And we know why people want to hurry up and open back up, especially in these Republican states where you have Trump supporters. They want to open back up because they want to get the economy running again, so they can have Trump out here toting about his economy sort of rebuilding itself again. But the reality is that even when these businesses open back up, 16.8% of Black people are now unemployed. That's a huge amount of people when you think that, you know, once Obama had left office, the rate was 7.8%. Under Trump, it dropped to like a percentage point or something like that. But when you start having people come back to work, especially if you live in a city like New York where people are getting on the subway, we know this is going to pop up again. And we haven't even reached the flu season yet. So it's just a matter of time before we start to see these numbers tick up even more.
Yeah, it gets to the point, you know, it's hard to say people can't go to work, you know, because even with the deferments, you know, most car notes or most mortgages, they'll give you 3 months. Then after the 3 months, they're like, you got to pay. And people are like, look, I can't survive off oodles and noodles anymore. I got to go out and get the bread. You know what I mean? I got to go pay my bills. I got to take care of my kids. So I understand, but it's very scary out there because, like I said, even for my daughter who graduated this year high school, this is supposed to be her year to party. This is supposed to be her year before she has to go to college. And she's been in the house for the last 14 weeks, you know, which is really sad. So
how do you think that coronavirus is going to affect Donald Trump's trying to get reelected, right? Because people are going to go out to the polls. Are they going to vote? There's a lot of voter suppression right now, as we know. And I know that's something that we're going to talk about with you, Rochelle. But what do you predict happening? And what do you think about, Envy was saying earlier, Joe Biden needs to just stop talking. I want to know your thoughts on both of those things. Donald Trump possibly getting reelected, and does Joe Biden need to just stop speaking?
I do have a strong sense that this pandemic, and certainly what we've seen happen in the comments that Donald Trump has made in regards to the murder of George Floyd, are definitely going to hurt him. When you think about the fact that there was a committee or a task force, if you will, that was responsible for keeping track of these pandemics like what we've seen with COVID-19. I think it was about a $200 million project called Predict. And the whole point of it was for it to, prepare for a pandemic such as this. And when Trump got into office, he dismantled it. And now here we are. And not only that, he was basically making it sound like the coronavirus was a hoax. And then he had his minions doing the same thing. And now you have over 100,000 people that have been diagnosed and thousands that are dead. And if, Black people have to pay attention to that, because we know that when these sort of pandemics happen, it's going to impact Black people more than any other demographic of people because of environmental racism and injustice. I mean, 1 out of 6 Black children are born with asthma. We know lungs. So for him to ignore this, but then try to tote the Black economy and Black unemployment in front of our face while at the same time killing us, no, I can't see us moving forward and supporting him in November.
Yeah, and they said over 2 million people contracted coronavirus and 115,000 deaths in the U.S. That's what they said.
Okay.
Now, what do you think about Joe Biden? And the reason I ask is sometimes I feel like they're great speakers. You look at Barack Obama, he was a great speaker, a motivator. I think with Joe Biden, sometimes I feel like he doesn't have all this stuff together, and I think his team might be a lot. And he's confused sometimes, and sometimes he says the wrong thing, but you're the president. I can say the wrong thing. Like, you know what I mean? Right. You can say the wrong thing. But sometimes as a presidential candidate, there's certain things you can't say. And he says all the wrong things. So I think sometimes he should just fall back and not speak as much. At first, I was mad he didn't go to George Floyd's funeral. I was like, you're a candidate. You should have been there. But then it might have been better that he just sent the video. See, that way he can,
It was recorded.
Right, try this again. Edit this.
Yeah, do it again. Well, you messed it up. You know what I mean? So how do you feel about Joe Biden and some of the things he says?
The thing with Joe Biden is I worry about Joe Biden in a debate with Donald Trump because, Donald Trump is not going to do a debate with Joe Biden. Not saying that he's not going to physically participate, but the argument is going to be a tit for tat. And I just worry that Joe Biden will react
and blurt out something crazy.
It's gonna start, mud's gonna start slinging. And I think that he has to be very strategic with Trump because that's exactly what he wants to do. He wants to get under Joe Biden's skin. He wants to ruffle his feathers. And so I worry about Joe Biden more so on a debate stage with Trump, especially when you're trying to pull in those people that are kind of on the fence. They like the status of the economy, but they don't like the character of Trump. They don't like the fighting. But then if Biden, which we have seen him kind of go off a little bit, on even just voters that have, questioned some of his policies, that's my biggest fear with him. Does he need to stop talking? No, but he needs to be better prepared to talk. And I don't feel that he's been coached well at all in that area.
Yeah, I just don't think he's coached well, and I don't think he remembers well. Like, it's almost one of those things where they give it to him right before he goes on air, and then he just starts, he'd be like, Texas, Tulsa, Oklahoma, New York, Canada, Africa. And be like, what? Never mind. You know what I mean? I see how some people, when they interview him, had he ruffled his feathers a little, like with Charlamagne and a couple of things that I've seen. So I could imagine somebody like Trump attacking him.
Oh, it's over. It's over.
Mm-hmm.
It's over. And that's what concerns me the absolute most with Biden, because, and also with Biden, it's really gonna, to me, depend on who he picks as his VP, because that's the person that we have to think that if Joe Biden becomes, has a health situation or God forbid something worse, that he's not able to run the country, who's his VP? And so it almost seems like we need to know who his VP pick is right now. You know, we always hear these rumors of, oh, it's going to be Keisha Lance Bottoms. Oh, it's going to be Stacey Abrams. It's like whatever Black person is trending that week, that person has a possibility of being Joe Biden's running mate. But that is the person that we really need to look to, because if he is not in the best health condition to run the country, that vice president is going to be the person that is.
If you worked with Joe Biden, who would you recommend that he pick as his running mate?
So, you know, one of the things that we continue to hear is that Joe Biden needs to pick a Black woman. I would absolutely love to see a Black woman on the ticket. I have always said that a Senator Kamala Harris Biden ticket would be a win. However, and the reason why is because he has to do something where he's pulling in that Bernie Sanders base that is looking for a younger, you know, someone that's younger, someone that's, you know, a person of color, you know, someone that has some far left views such as Medicare for all, which Kamala Harris has come out in support. What he cannot do is he cannot pick another moderate, because that's going to turn Bernie Sanders supporters off. And what we saw in 2016, I know a lot of people like to try and blame Black people for, you know, Trump being elected in 2016 because we didn't come out and necessarily vote. But that's not necessarily the case, because a lot of Bernie Sanders supporters, 1 out of 10, actually voted for Donald Trump because they were so, you know, upset that Hillary Clinton had gotten the nomination. And so she ended up losing in key states like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, all those states she lost. And a majority of Bernie Sanders supporters voted for Trump in those states. So he has to do something that is going to build a bridge between his moderate views and those very far left views.
Right.
Now, what do you have to say about voting? Because I know you have some different type of view on whether or not your vote does matter. You know, we talked to Ebony K. Williams the other day, and she stressed how important it is for us to vote, just because whoever will be president, whether or not you like Joe Biden, it is going to matter as far as who we have appointed in these positions as judges and so forth. So what are your thoughts on whether or not our vote counts?
Well, you know, I think that we obviously have to do our part in participating in the electoral process, whether you're voting for, you know, a Republican or whether you're voting for a Democrat. My main issue, however, though, is, like I was saying, is that we continue to hear this narrative that Black people did not come out and vote, and that, you know, they came out and support, and because they didn't come out, they basically were paving the way for Donald Trump to be in the Oval Office. But the reality is that I'm tired of hearing that, because it's giving a pass to white women, which 53% of them voted for Donald Trump, is giving a pass to those Bernie Sanders supporters that I mentioned before, where 1 out of 10 voted for Donald Trump, and it's trying to put the onus on Black people. The problem is not necessarily the Black vote. We've been coming out and doing our job. The problem is that you have policies that are being put forth to Black people that are really regurgitated and outdated. We see the same Black agenda every 4 years. I mean, I'm sorry, is it still 1965? Why are we still getting Black agendas about equal pay? Why are we still getting Black agendas about funding for inner city schools? That should have been done a long time ago. And so you have these policies that are being put forth, even with Elizabeth Warren's policy, where she had a housing plan where she was going to give a down payment to people. She was going to give a down payment to people who currently live in formerly red-lined areas. Okay, sounds like a great plan. The problem is that only 28% of Black people currently live in formerly red-lined areas. 72% are white and Latino. So that means that the Black people who were impacted by redlining wouldn't even benefit the most from such a plan. So it's not the Black vote. It's not the fault of Black people. The problem is the Black agenda.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I wanted to ask about, you talked about funding. What were your thoughts? And I've seen it all on your Instagram page.
Defunding the police.
Defunding the police. What are your thoughts on defunding the police?
So yeah, I was talking to a friend of mine who was a former Atlanta police officer, and we did an IG Live about that. And so here's my thoughts about defunding the police. I am concerned that if you defund the police, we are going to have more neighborhood watch people like George Zimmerman. I think this is an opportunity for white supremacists and racists to start to police their communities and take the lives of Black people, just like we saw with Ahmaud Arbery. Defunding the police is not going to address police brutality. Okay, a lot of people are saying, oh, well, they have military tanks and they have military style weapons. They don't need those. But when Tamir Rice was shot, the police that rolled up on him did not roll up in some sort of, tank. He rolled up in a squad car, so, demilitarizing the police, yes, sounds like a good idea, but George Floyd was not shot with a military style weapon. This officer used his body to kill him, as we have seen in cases like Eric Garner as well, as we have seen with Derek Scott. This is another brother of ours out of Oklahoma whose video was just released showing that he died in a chokehold. So it's not defunding the police that is the problem. The problem is the Police Bill of Rights, which basically gives these officers additional protection when they are accused of using excessive force, especially when it causes a death. That's the problem. The other problem is that taxpayers are the ones paying the civil lawsuits. Why should we be paying the civil lawsuits for police brutality cases? If somebody's spent $2.5 million, why is that coming out of taxpayers' dollars? That doesn't make sense to me. So we need to be looking at the Police Bill of Rights, and we need to be looking at these union contracts, which also gives additional protections on top of the Bill of Rights.
But that's where, one of my things with defunding the police is two things, like you said. One, I want the books to be opened up and see where this money's going, right? Like for New York, let's say for New York, for instance, right? They said $6 billion a year. Tell me where that $6 billion is going first. Then we can say, okay, well, let's move this money this way. $6 billion, you got to tell me where this money's going. And I agree with you. Defunding the police, there is no way in hell that my tax-paying money should be going to these lawsuits when y'all F up.
Right. We're paying when you kill somebody from our community. We're also paying out the lawsuit.
No, that is part of defunding the police. We shouldn't be paying that. We should have that money, and we should be putting that money into schools, into community programs, into whatever it is, small businesses. But first, I want to see where that money's coming from. Like, where's this money? This $6 billion. Cops are not getting paid $500,000 a year. Cops are not getting paid $1 million a year. So where's this money going to?
Right, and I understand what you're saying, Rochelle, though, because these are two separate issues, like reallocating some of those funds in the community. But the other issue is, it's not necessarily that, because we do need things in our community. We do need better education. We do need community service centers. We need better health, nutrition, all of that. But what we also need, like you said, is with these police officers getting away with these things, this has nothing to do with the funding that they have. This has to do with the rights that they have and the way these things are covered up. So those are two separate things.
It's the protections. It's the protections. And when you think about the fact that with Breonna Taylor right now, I'm in Lexington, Kentucky right now. I'm not in New York, but an hour down the road in Louisville, Kentucky, Breonna Taylor. The fact that these police officers were able to turn in a police report that didn't have anything on it, was basically a lie. That is a problem. Let me tell you something. That's probably not the first time that this has happened. That is a practice. That is something that has been normalized in some police departments. And so there needs to be a full investigation into what is happening in Louisville. And that's why I say these policies, these protections, these practices, that is the issue. And also, of course, you want to do some bias training and everything like that so you can root out racist cops. But the Police Bill of Rights and these police unions are the problem. When I was at the state's attorney's office as the director of communications in Baltimore City under Marilyn Mosby during Freddie Gray, I saw how these police unions, talked about cases and the things that they would post, which were so insensitive to a loss of life. And so these police unions that are backing these police officers and these Bill of Rights, that's where we really, really need to start.
You know what, Rochelle, we got to have, because we're, I love everything that you have to say. Like I said, I'm always so impressed by you. So we're going to have you on definitely a whole lot more to educate us on things and even have debates if need be, because obviously we don't all always agree on everything, but I do always appreciate how much, how well-versed you are with everything, because you teach me a lot. So let's agree to do that. Also, I would love to see you working on Joe Biden's campaign. Is that something you would want to do?
I would consider it. Look, let me tell you something. You never turn down an opportunity like that. You know what I mean? So if the possibility came, yes, because I think that one of the things Joe Biden definitely needs is people that are interested in researching these subjects fully. Because when you stay on the surface, if you stay on the surface and you don't dig deep, you're gonna have some hiccups, and he's had too many.
What if Trump asked you to work on his campaign?
Hell no.
Just had to make sure. Okay.
Right,
Hell no.
Well, thank you for checking in. We appreciate you so much. Thank you so much.
All right, thank y'all. Be safe.
Just one last question. That picture in the back, that's you, like when you were 16, when you like this, that picture right to the left of you?
Oh, you thought I was 16? No,
Let's see this.
I was what, 30, 38? No, 37.
Okay, we see you.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. It's got some little editing on that, but it's different.
All right. Rochelle Ritchie is the Breakfast Club. Good morning. Thank you.
Thank you.